Hello everyone. So right now we're in the World War II tunnels in Gibraltar, and I'm going to be talking to you about some of the history in here and some of the operations involving Gibraltar throughout the war. So when the war broke out in 1939, Britain decided that they needed to extend their defences in Gibraltar, because if Gibraltar was taken by the Axis, then it would cut off their supply to the rest of the empire in Africa and Asia, which would mean that Japan would take over India and all their most vital colonies in the Far East. So they dug like miles upon miles of tunnels inside Gibraltar, extending the already very extensive tunnel network. But it's these operations I want to focus on. So Operation Catapult was a British operation in 1940, which has sort of gone down in infamy as like a friendly fire incident between the British and the French. So after the fall of France in 1940, Britain basically had a concern that the French would hand their navy over to the Nazis, as Germany now occupied mainland France. So the British gave the French navy three options. They could either, one, scuttle their own navy, two, sail them over to a British port where they could be interned or handed over to the British, who could then use that fleet to fight the Nazis. Or three, the British would sail their own fleet to the French naval base in the Mers el-Kabir, and they would basically destroy the fleet themselves. France never gave the British a reply, so feeling that they needed to take actions into their own hands, the British sailed their fleet from Britain to Mers el-Kabir in French Algeria, and ordered their ships to open fire on the French fleet, which was the first time since the Napoleonic Wars that Britain and France had fired on each other as enemies. And then from there on out, Britain and France were at least officially at war with each other, as Germany set up the puppet state of Vichy France to basically give the illusion that France had decided to switch sides. And then the second operation I want to talk about is Operation Felix. So Operation Felix was a German plan during World War II to invade Gibraltar and cut off the British access through the strait. But a big part of this plan required Spanish permission to move through their country, because the Germans would need to go from Vichy France through Spain to get to Gibraltar. But Francisco Franco, the fascist dictator of Spain, having just led his country through a 3-year civil war just before the outbreak of World War II, didn't feel as if his country was ready to fight another war. So he had to decline Hitler's offer. But had the invasion gone through, the British had actually come up with a contingency plan to bury 6 British agents inside the rock Rock of Gibraltar in what became known as the Stay Behind Cave, which is where Operation Tracer comes in. Operation Tracer was a contingency plan involving the Secretary Ian Fleming, who would later go on to write the James Bond novels. And it was a plan by the British to bury 6 operatives inside the rock in a secret cave called Stay Behind Cave, and they would be required to basically enclose themselves in this tunnel, like blow the entrance to the tunnel and trap themselves in there. They would be given 10,000 gallons of water and enough food to survive for 2 years, and they would have little slits in the side of the rock where they could peek out and spy across the strait, like look across the strait and spy on the Axis naval activity happening in the water. And then they would have this, they would have a radio set to communicate with the Admiralty in London, and they would basically report on the Axis naval activity going on. But luckily the invasion of Gibraltar never happened, so this plan never had to be put in action, but still it's interesting to know that such a plan did exist. And finally there's Operation Torch, which was the joint Anglo-American invasion of French Morocco. By this point, the Allies were already pushing into Italian Libya. They were already halfway through Italian Libya at this point, after a botched Axis invasion of British Egypt. Basically, at the start of the Italian campaign, Mussolini had boldly thought that he could take over British-controlled Egypt by himself, but just like any Italian invasion in the war, they soon realised their troops were pretty incompetent against the enemy, and they needed the Germans to basically come and bail them out. Although after the Americans entered the war in 1941, their troubles would soon double. By 1942, the Americans were now in Britain and in Gibraltar, and Eisenhower had actually established Gibraltar as his headquarters for the North Africa campaign. So Operation Torch, the British and Americans do a joint invasion of French Morocco and Algeria, and basically the Axis gets squeezed in from both sides, from both French North Africa and from Italian Libya, and the forces in the east and the west meet in the middle in Vichy French Tunisia, where the Axis forces evacuate from North Africa into mainland Italy. And after the Italian campaign, after the North African campaign concluded, Churchill wanted to push into southern Europe, which he called the soft underbelly of Europe. Basically the idea that Italy was the weakest Axis power, and so taking them out first should be the #1 priority. The Americans, on the other hand, led by President Roosevelt, they wanted to invade Northern Europe first, by invading occupied France, which they would later do in 1944, but as of now, they put Churchill's idea first. So So then there's Operation Mincemeat, which was the deception plan by the British Admiralty to drop off a corpse in southern Spain and convince the Abwehr, the German spy network stationed in Spain, that the real target would be Greece, not Sicily. So they get the body of a homeless Welshman called Glyndwr Michael. They give him a false alias, and they dress him up in a British officer's uniform, and they put him in a submarine, sail him to the Spanish coast, and then they drop him off the coast of Huelva, where he's found by Spanish authorities. And as a neutral country, Spain was obligated to hand over the intelligence back to the country it came from. But also, as a fascist country, Spain was more than willing to let the Nazis take a little sneak peek at the plans. So before handing the plans back to the British, they secretly give them to the Germans in Madrid, who take a look at these false plans, and they basically buy into the idea that the invasion is going to really happen in Greece and that Sicily is just a distraction. So, buying into the plan, Hitler diverts a large number of forces from Sicily and puts them in Greece. And after that, of course, the real invasion came in through Sicily, and rather than meeting the fierce resistance they expected, they meet rather light resistance from Italian coastal divisions, who quickly surrendered to the Allies, as by this point Italy was pretty sick of the war. So as soon as Italy fell to the Allies, the Fascist Council in Rome deposed Mussolini and put him under house arrest. And after that, Italy basically sued for peace with the Allies, and Italy became the first Axis power to surrender in 1943, 2 years before Germany and Japan. After which point the Italians basically switched sides and joined the Allies as Germany invaded Italy, northern Italy, to try and, in an attempt to stop the surrender, and they set up basically a fascist puppet state in the north, and the south, which was the free part of Italy, basically switched sides and became an allied country, fighting the fascist puppet state in the north. And, well, from that point on, the war goes further away from Gibraltar. The Allies invade northern France in 1944 on D-Day. The Soviets push in from the east, and then in 1945 both sides close in on Germany. The Soviets reach Berlin, Hitler commits suicide in his bunker, and then on the 8th of May 1945 Germany surrenders, and then in August 1945 the atomic bombs are dropped on Japan, and in September 1945 Japan then also surrenders to the Allies, and World War II ends. But I just wanted to talk you through some of the operations involving Gibraltar and how they had an impact on the war. So hopefully you found them interesting. I'm sorry if I ranted or stuttered or whatever, but yeah, hope you enjoyed.
I just want to also apologise from the guy behind the camera about the noise around, in case anyone's getting distracted by the noise. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys.